to acquire, maintain directly or indirectly an interest in and control of United States currency and other personal property through a pattern of racketeering activity, and while associated with an enterprise did unlawfully conspire to conduct and participate in, directly and indirectly, such enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. It's a lot of words, that's a mouthful. And we're going to get to talking about what that means, what it doesn't mean, how it applies to the evidence that's been presented in this case. But before we even get there, I want to talk to you about a big part of the state's case in count 1, but also the other counts that they allege against my client. And that is the state's use of quote unquote expert witnesses, more specifically the gang investigators that they have called.
He's going
Ms.
there.
Kokomo, if you could put on page 4. They've called, as you probably recall, a gentleman named Belknap, Investigator Underwood, Investigator Dennis, Investigator Gaither, and Investigator Viverito. Some of those people they've called multiple times in this case. And I want to talk to you about how to analyze their testimony and what your duties as jurors are to consider how much weight to give the testimony of those witnesses, those quote-unquote self-proclaimed experts. You'll be given this jury instruction, 130-130, about expert witnesses, and I'm going to focus on the second paragraph. It says, you are not required to accept the testimony of any witnesses, expert or otherwise. Testimony of an expert, like that of all witnesses, is to be given only such weight and credit as you think it is properly entitled to receive. So, and Mr. Atkins talked about this in his opening a little bit, expert witnesses are just like any other witness. And you're going to be instructed on how to evaluate the credibility of any witness. Not just lay witnesses, but experts as well. And there's some factors that the Honorable Court is going to give you to consider in evaluating the credibility and evaluating how much weight to give these witnesses. Some of the factors are their manner of testifying, how they come across at the stand, how they act, their means and opportunity of knowing facts for which they testify, their interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the case. Are they biased? And their personal credibility as you observe it. Those are all factors you can consider when evaluating Investigator Gaither, Investigator Dennis, Investigator Viverito. So let's talk about the testimony and what we observed from the stand from these experts. I'd like to talk to you about their training. What did we learn about their training, all these experts? Well, we heard GGIA, Georgia Gang Investigators Association. We heard that a lot, about how there's 20 members. Remember, and we asked about what your training is, and they say, well, I go to the 2-day seminar every year. GGIA, there's 20 members. And then we learn who teaches at these seminars. Remember Detective Underwood? Remember Detective Underwood? And Detective Underwood was a nice lady, but she was sent up here on a fool's errand. They wanted her to testify about the intersection of gangs and music. And she clearly wasn't qualified. She knew almost nothing about music. But she said, yeah, I'm qualified because I think I did a 2-hour block a couple years ago on that. Okay. I think Viverito taught that class. Okay. So now Viverito is the teacher. So I asked her, I said, oh, very interesting. You took a 2-hour class a couple years ago in this subject, and that makes you an expert. Okay. Did you guys hear from any experts in black history, black art, any literature professors, anyone that has studied hip-hop, anyone from the hip-hop community, anyone from the community at large, when you guys all meet, the 20 of you, to talk about gang stuff at this seminar? Nope. It was just Investigator Viverito. Okay, what about scholarly reports? Nope, just Investigator Viverito. The more we ask these witnesses, these experts, about what their training is, what their background is, what their basis for testifying as experts and telling us how to analyze things, telling us what certain words mean, telling us what's gang-related or not, telling us what's relevant and what's not. It all stems from these meetings, this echo chamber that they have, where they hear from no one else, no outside voices at all. And they all call each other experts. And they even created an association to look official. Talk about their manner of testimony, or testifying, excuse me. Think about Lieutenant Gaither when she was on the stand. Remember when I was allowed to ask questions? I tried to ask her some questions when they weren't vague. Did she really want to answer my questions? You know, you see on direct with the state, back and forth, it's like a tango. Yeah, it's like a script. And then I get up, or another defense attorney gets up to ask questions. Can't get a simple answer for anything. What color is the sky? Oh, let me tell you about the FedEx video. Just commentary, commentary, commentary. Same thing with Investigator Viverito. Just unnecessary commentary. Avoiding answering questions that I ask. Clearly, Investigator Dennis was doing the same thing. He's out of here. He was sent home. Consider the manner that they testify and how much weight and credibility they really have in this matter. Think about their interest and lack of interest in the case, also known as their bias. Mr. Kokomo, would you put up Mr. Williams 70A for me? Remember this? Remember Lieutenant Gaither getting up there? Oh yeah, I saw that. This was important. This was a symbol of a gang war. This is the gang war that was going on. This is YSL declaring war on Bird Gang, which is an offshoot of the If Gang. Oh yeah, that's what it is. She told you that. As sure as can be, the expert that y'all are supposed to rely on. Well, what did my good friend, Attorney Brian Steele, do? Brought in the album cover. Wait a second, you're saying that this is a hawk skull and a gang war? Isn't this an album cover of a collaboration between my client, Young Thug, this is Attorney Steele talking, Young Thug and Future? And isn't his label Free Bands? And isn't Future's Free Bands mascot an eagle? Isn't this album cover just signifying the collaboration between the eagle and the snake? Doesn't that make more sense? After all, that's exactly what the album is. Okay. Mr. Kokomo, could you put up 471 VV? Remember this? This Kokomo, that's not 471 VV.
This is the affidavit, the Viverito affidavit. The 24
And actually, can you put
carat.
up 471 VVA first?
I mean, the 24 million diamond. Here we go.
Okay, we saw that video. But first, actually, VV. Investigator Viverito brought this into evidence, said this was one of the social media posts that she pulled. Remember that? When she wrote no reports about pulling social media, we have no idea what she looked at, what she didn't. She just determines what's relevant. Not us. Not you. You don't get to see that. She determines. Remember? This came into evidence. She said, of course, she didn't give us a date because she wrote no report, but she said she collected this shortly after the shooting of Chanel drinks. I run with... What you saying? I run with cold-blooded killers. Blooded killers. And that's Quamarvius Nichols. That looks pretty bad. Looks bad. It's posted a day after this killing, and it's a post, and clearly that's what it says. No other explanation. And then what do we find out later? What do we find out later? Could you put on 471 VV? Can you play it, Mr. Kokomo? We find out that this was part of a post, a story that had a bunch of different posts about fear of roller coasters, about being sick, whole bunch of different things. And then we finally get to the part where it has the lyrics from Young Boy Never Broke Again, right? Let's watch. We don't even see these lyrics. Why don't we see them on this post? Because they're on for a millisecond in the very beginning of the switch. And we hear about Instagram and how those aren't really words that Mr. Nichols would have typed. Those are words from a song that he picked. And sometimes you pick the lyrics if you want, and sometimes Instagram picks them for you. But what else do we see from watching the entire post? Those weren't even the featured lyrics. The lyrics were being transitioned to the lyrics that either Instagram or Mr. Nichols picked, but in a split millisecond for whatever so desperately wanted you guys to see.
Hello.
Were on the screen. And so what did Investigator Viverito do? She gets the post. She goes frame by frame until it gets to that exact point where it has what she feels looks like incriminating words by Mr. Nichols. Words that weren't even picked by him. And she freezes it, and she screenshots it, and then she puts it in front of you. Again, no report about what she did. She manipulated the evidence. And she's caught. But what does that tell you about her? When we're talking about assessing credibility, your lack of interest in the case, your bias. Does she have an agenda when she does things like that? Of course she does. She's not a neutral witness. She might as well be sitting here. But I don't even think they would do that. Personal credibility as you observe it. Mr. Kokomo, could you put that other exhibit that you put up, the affidavit? .530 VV, this is the affidavit. Remember we learned about affidavits, and Investigator Viverito was looking into the assassination attempts that she was, of Mr. Rashawn Bennett in the jail. And she
Hello? Why did it stop? Oh. Hold on, let's see. I don't know why it's doing that.
conversation, a text thread, where
We're gonna
Mr.
go
Williams...
back. We'll go back like 20 seconds. Yeah, you can see the stream restarted itself. It says the stream's only been on for 1 minute. So something happened with the court camera feed.
And so she had to fill out an affidavit to give it to a judge to get permission to convince the judge, basically, to give her permission to search Jeffrey Williams' home for evidence. So what does she do? She finds a conversation, a text thread, where Mr. Williams says, YSL rule the world, kid, 24M on an head. And she folds it and makes it bigger and circles it for the judge to draw attention to that, because of course she wants the judge to feel that Mr. Williams is just ordering hits on people. That's the implication. That's the message she's sending the judge. And here I am. I know about Jeffrey Williams 3 and Jeffrey Williams 4 that Mr. Steele brought in, about the day before this text thread about Lil Uzi Vert putting a $24 million diamond into his own forehead, and Jeffrey Williams thinking that's funny, and that conversation happening, and this having nothing to do with ordering hits on anyone. And here I am. I say, oh, let me confront Investigator Viverito with this. And what was my point, really? What should have happened? Oh, yeah, I misinterpreted that. You're right. And then I would have been Mr. Smart Lawyer and say, see, jurors, Investigator Viverito doesn't always know what she's talking about. She misinterpreted that one when she's telling you what my client means when he says things, what other people mean when they say things. Investigator Viverito doesn't know. She makes mistakes. That's what I thought was going to happen. But what happened? Something far darker. Investigator Viverito sat in that chair and said, she doubled down. And she said, you know what? Even knowing what I know now about 24M on the end's head, even knowing what I know now, I would still put it in that affidavit. That's all I needed to hear. Yeah, I would mislead a judge. Yeah, I would lie in an affidavit. Yeah, I would cheat because I'm that invested in this case. I'm that invested with taking these guys down. I'm that invested. And if she's that invested in that, and the rest of these gang investigators are that invested, consider their credibility. Take what they say with a huge grain of salt. You don't have to believe what they say. You can disregard everything they say. The law allows you to do that. When they say, oh, this is a hybrid gang, and they can't even explain what that means or why it's classified as a hybrid gang, and it's just something that they come up with at their little private meetings every year at these 2-day seminars where they don't get input from anyone else. You don't have to buy that. It's not a hybrid gang. All right. Let's start talking about count one. Mr. Kokomo, if you could put